Conversation with an expert or a thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. My name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and I'm the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And this presentation is an encore presentation of my conversation with Mike Brewer. He's the COO of the Radco companies. And Mike and I had a great conversation about leadership through change, leadership into and through innovation. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So sit back, relax. I'll be back tomorrow with another Shadow Short conversation, but enjoy this conversation today with Mike Brewer. Hey, welcome back to Shadow Shorts. If we've never met before, my name is Jeff Echols. I am a senior advisor and the head of marketing at Shadow Partners. And every weekday I come to you, I bring you a short conversation, Shadow Shorts, a short conversation with an expert or a thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. Today will be no different. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Mike Brewer. He is the COO of the Radco companies, and Mike has a passion for leadership. We've talked about this. We've talked about books that we've read and compared notes and shared suggestions. And if you were around yesterday when I was talking with Bill Boynes from our team about change management, I think this is going to be a great basically second episode because we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about change. We're going to talk about innovation. So, Mike, thanks a lot for being here. I'm looking forward. This is going to be a fun conversation.
I agree, Jeff. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad that you're here. Now, as I said in the intro, I mean, we've talked a lot about your passion for leadership and some of the books that we've read. I know that, like every organization, Radco Companies has gone through a lot of change, and you're continually looking forward. And that means a lot of things in a lot of departments, obviously. But when you're leading your troops, so to speak, what are the things that you're paying attention to, maybe to keep your finger on the pulse um, and make sure that you're guiding them through change and into innovation as is necessary?
Yeah, wow, it's a big
Big
question
question.
because there's such a fire hose of information that is available to people these days. I think what I really try to pay attention to is uh, a little bit of the bleeding edge, right? What is
Mhm.
way out there in the distant future, and then practical application that is a little more near to the horizon. And then in real day application, we do things as simple as books are a passion of mine. I have a book club that we administer with our senior team every Monday morning. We're reading a book constantly, but we're trying to pay attention to what is really impacting our culture and our team members on an individual basis, especially right now in the areas of mental health. And
Mhm.
because of all these outside factors that have really laid a lot of I guess, weight on people or tax on people as of late. We're paying attention a lot to mental health and how people are showing up in the workplace in service. We're in the multifamily space, so in service of
Mhm.
our customer. So I'm paying attention to a lot of stuff, and it sort of is way out there, and then bringing it back to today.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great perspective, and I always, when I put on the consultant hat, there's always the zoom in and zoom out, right?
Mhm.
There's
That's right.
what's out here, or up here, depending on how you want to frame that. But then how do we apply that? And one of the things that we hear a lot is, pick your topic. It could be AI. It could be industrialized construction. There's all these innovations that are happening. All this change or change makers that are in the marketplace, and we have to keep in mind. I think it's okay. AI, fantastic. How do we use that? How do we implement that? What do we do? The Shadow Partners email that just went out last night was about AI and AI policies. At the end of the day, these are simply tools, and the tools somehow affect the people in our organizations. And a big fear, and Bill and I talked about this yesterday. a big fear of a lot of leaders is, hey, what if we implement this but no one uses it?
Mhm.
Um, and I think when you're focused on leadership, that's I think about somebody in your position. I think, yeah, I mean, all the noise, all the noise that's out there, necessary noise, distractive noise, all of that. How do I funnel that? How do I distill that into
Mhm.
something that's useful and something that's actually going to be adopted into our culture?
That's right. I think at least what comes to mind for me is in this moment, it's always been important, but it's incredibly important anymore to help people see the why behind the
Mm,
what first and
yeah.
foremost, right? You really have to understand. Well, let's even take it a step back. Really define the root problem or concern that you're trying to address with innovation, or be it software solutions or et cetera. Like, really understand what you're trying to accomplish, then help people understand the why behind the what, and get them involved in the conversation in terms of change management or rollout, et cetera, et cetera. And then you implement, and then you leave lots of room for forums and formats where people can give feedback along the way. So the more you can get them interested in what you're trying to solve and to be a part of the solution, I think that is the real key to making sure there is mass adoption to anything you're trying to roll out in an organization.
Yeah. I like the way you lay that out. I mean, to me, as you were explaining that, I thought my next question was going to be about culture. But as you were explaining that, I thought this is how you build that culture, right? If you do that over and over, and it becomes part of the DNA, that's the culture, right? Is that the day-to-day task?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's interesting. It comes to mind for me. I don't know if this fits here, but I'm going to say it anyway. I, some of the most successful leaders understand the concept or the philosophy of picking mission, picking values,
Mhm.
picking purpose, and then repeating that ad nauseum. And only when you start getting sick of hearing yourself say those things or repeating those things are you finally communicating and getting that culture imbued in people's minds. You have to
Yeah,
get comfortable with just constant repetition to create
yeah,
a culture that is embracing innovation.
yeah. Well, that makes sense. And you mentioned the why behind the what.
Mhm.
And before we went live, we were talking about purpose-driven organizations, and I think when we're talking about repeating that ad nauseum, I
Mhm.
often think that if this team understands the why and buys into it, right? There's got to be buy-in, right? They have to align with it. It has to mean something to them. That's so much easier and healthier, I think, um, to have that understanding and to have that buy-in than to because I think you and I have been in situations, and probably anybody that's in the audience here has been in the situation where they had a leader that it was semantics, right? It was just something that a committee had voted on every word of, and this is our slogan, this is our whatever, and we're going to beat everybody over the head with it. We're going to repeat it at nauseum, and it's meaningless to everyone, right? Those are vastly different things, and I think vastly different expectation. Well, maybe not expectations, but manifestation of success, I guess, in those arenas.
That's right. And I think it's right to say that doing this work is a longer road to success than
Mm,
what you just suggested and or kind of laid out there. But it's kind of like value investing, right? You
yeah,
make all these investments in time, money, and resource, creating forums and formats and getting feedback and so on and so forth. People feel invested in it, they feel loyal because of it. And down the road, when that sort of groundswell of investment finally pops, right, your infrastructure is strong enough to endure the ups and downs of the business cycles that are inevitably going to come, right?
right, right,
Versus that flash in the pan autocratic way of
yeah,
leading, where you're
yeah,
just, creating the words on paper and then sort of force feeding it to people. It just works
Yeah.
better the other way, even though it's a little bit slower to get to the result.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the force feeding version of that, I think, is the flash in the pan version
Mhm.
is most of the times not sustainable. I don't think.
Correct. That
Yeah, when
that's right.
when you're as you're looking out, I mean, we've passed the halfway point. It's August 16th today as we record this. Um, so we're past the halfway point in 2023. We're on sort of the downhill slope for this year and starting to plan for 2024. So, as somebody that is charged with and is passionate about leading people and leading innovation and leading change, because we all know that change is inevitable. It has to. It has to happen. Um, what maybe what's your recommendation for
Yeah.
others in the space that are out there that are in a similar position? Go, hey, the ship's maybe missing the rudder a little bit, or
Right.
we're trying to figure out how to go forward to towards 2024. What do you recommend?
My favorite exercise that I've been doing individually and in a team environment for, who knows, let's call it a decade, um, or more, is the top three. And what I mean by that is, think about the top three things that consume most of your time or energy or resource, whether it be individually and or as an organization. What is sucking the most resource out of your company or out of you? And then put that down on a piece of paper and then think through systems, disciplines, or technologies or other things that you can put against, under the premise you want to get this time back, right?
Hmm.
Is it a system? Is it a discipline? Is it a routine? Is it a piece of software? Is it just collaborating with people that can help you reduce the amount that you're putting into this? And then take it one step further. What are you going to replace now that you have this time back? Let's say you get 3 hours a week back. What are you going to do with that 3 hours in the way of an investment, and then create some expected returns for that?
I like that. That's a great exercise. So you do that with your teams then?
Correct.
When you said personally as well, but
Yeah, we do. I do personally to set my own personal goals, but then we do it as an
yeah,
organization to actually lay out what then ultimately become initiatives for the coming year, and then we break those down into quarters, and sometimes we break them down into even sprints. Even though we're not a software company, we do break things down into
yeah,
sprints sometimes.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's the way we create the loose roadmap for the out year or the year to come.
Okay, so I take the things that are taking up the most time.
That's right.
My goal is to get that time back.
That's right.
Come up with things to push against those, right? The tools, if I can call them that, the systems, et cetera.
That's right.
Um, and then once I get that time back, how am I going to invest that
Right.
into future? Okay.
That's right. In the early innings, I would just save that time, and because I was not thoughtful about, right, putting something against that, like what am I going to do with that time? I just
Right.
often, right, I lost that time again into to something that was
Sure.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So I learned
Yeah.
later on, hey, put this piece in there.
Yeah. You just shifted it over into another bucket that didn't have a return. Yeah. That makes sense.
That's right.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It, that would be that it would be interesting to see or hear some specific examples of that. I'm kind of thinking through that in my own head now, right? I'm starting to do that exercise. Okay, how does that work? Um, what are there any specific initiatives that you can share that have come out of that?
Sure. I'm going to go back 2 years. This one is most pronounced for me, for us, for our organization. We didn't have a standardized way of interviewing individuals that would come into the company. We just,
Hmm.
we had sort of adopted other people's philosophies and concepts for interviewing. But we identified that as a time suck, forgive the language, but the time suck in our organization, because on the backside, we would end up letting people go that didn't really fit the culture. They didn't fit the systems or processes and disciplines routine. So we sat down and we said, okay, to get this time back, we need to create a real systematized way of doing this. And we need to think through not only behavioral based interviewing concepts, but also motivationally
Mhm.
based concepts. And so we blended those two things together to create our own interview process.
Yeah.
And then we went through the training mechanism and the application of that. And ultimately, now our turnover rate is down drastically, except for one position, which is really a broader function of the industry. But uh, save that one position in our organization, our turnover rates are drastically less than they were at the time we were just kind of, you know, not didn't have a system in place for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's it's not ironic. I mean, that's what we talk about, right? But um,
Mhm.
you've innovated and developed that new system, and that's the that's the return on the other side. That's fantastic.
That's right. Yeah, it saves us a lot of time now on the backside
Mhm.
because we don't have this constant churn, or the churn is not as prevalent as it was
Right.
back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, it's bigger than just time. There's a lot of resources
Oh, definitely.
that are involved there. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. We're headed another month and a half or 2.5 months, I guess, to um, Shadow Summit, October 24th through 26th in Atlanta. And one of the things that we say about Shadow Summit is that this is our time. We don't call it a conference, right? We're not going to get learning units or anything like that. This is a time for people like you, people like me, people, a lot of the guests that have been on Shadow Shorts to get together and talk about important issues and set an agenda
Mhm.
for built environment. And that could mean architecture, engineering, construction, real estate, anybody. There are a lot of fields and a lot of people that are responsible for shaping the world that we live in.
Mhm.
And so we talk about setting the agenda for 2024 as you look, I guess even broader than Radco companies, but it could certainly be, Radco or multifamily.
Mhm.
What's one topic that you think should be discussed at Summit? What's something that needs to be talked about and reckoned with and needs to be on the agenda for 2024?
Yeah, this great question. I hope that I'm qualified in some way to answer this. A bit of it, I think, is a little bit speculation on my part, but I think if I think about the built environment and I think about being on the heels of one of the most dramatic things that has ever happened to our society, at least modern day, right? And I mean
Mhm.
COVID. It is, how do you build environments that first and foremost are safe for our health,
Mm.
right? And then how do you build them in a way that is in support of our mental health, right? Because you're in a built environment you're probably inside more than you're outside,
Mm.
right? Unless you're
Yeah,
really
definitely.
intentional about that. But how do you build that environment such that it enhances or enriches your mental health in some way, not just because you're there to work and create toil, which I do think has some good cognitive benefits, but how do you create the community around that? How do you create the collision points
Mm.
within that built environment that give cause for people to come together and not be siloed or nested in an office, but rather out in community, collaborating and having conversation and gesturing with one another, having fun and doing those sorts of things. So I think if I were to boil that down to one word, design is really important as we look forward to the future, not only for multifamily, but for office. God bless office. Hopefully it comes back and in retail and other environments. I think we have to really keep mental health center to that conversation, or at least somewhat center to that conversation. And how do
Yeah,
we enhance
yeah,
people?
yeah. I agree. I think that's an amazingly important aspect that, as somebody that spent 25 years working in AE firms and designing things, um, I don't ever remember. Um, to, I don't think I'm a little getting a little past the age now, but I don't ever remember a project where that was a conversation.
Mm,
Um, and I think for a lot of years, maybe generations, we've missed the boat on that. So I think that's a really great point, and appreciate you bringing that up. If you're out there watching this, listening to this, and thinking, "Wow, that is something that needs to be talked about," that's just an example. Right? This is just Mike and I having a conversation, sort of off the cuff here, but that's an example of the kinds of conversations that can go on at Shadow Summit, either from the stage or in the corridors. That's what the summit is about: is bringing up the things that need to be reckoned with in terms of the built environment. So I'm going to put a URL up on the screen right now so you can find the website for Shadow Summit. It's shadowsummit.com. It's down the lower left of your screen right now. There is an apply button. Tickets are going fast. It is purposefully intimate. There are only 200 seats available, and many of those are already taken. So hit that apply button and join us at Shadow Summit. And beyond that, Mike, you have a podcast. It's a very good podcast. What's the name of the podcast, and where can people find it?
Yeah, definitely. Wherever you get your podcast, it's
Yep.
called the Multifamily Collective. Yeah, and it is a combination of daily, small little snippets of things that I'm thinking about, 1 to 5 minutes, and then once a week we do a full blown interview session with people mostly in the multifamily industry, but sometimes outside the multifamily industry.
Yeah.
Interview format that's about an hour long, plus minus.
Yeah, yeah, I love the format, the short and the long. It's a really nice combo. So
Mhm.
check out the Multifamily Collective wherever you consume podcasts. And if you want to know more about Mike and his work or his team's work, go to radco.us. That URL's up on the screen right now as well. So, Mike, thanks so much for. We went a little bit more than short, so this is like a shadow medium today. But thanks so much for this great conversation and raising some really important points.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you're here. And for everybody out there that's watching either live or in some time shifted manner, we appreciate you. I'll be back again tomorrow at noon Eastern with another Shadow Short, another expert or thought leader in the realm of innovation for the built environment. So I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.